Thank you for joining us today on Human Capital Gains. I'm your host, Gary Lamach. Today, we are joined by Brad Moss and Glenn Hopper. Glenn Hopper is head of AI research and development at Aventus Advisory Group. He's an author and educator and a pioneering thought leader focused on the intersection of artificial intelligence and corporate finance. Also joining us today is Brad Moss. Brad is founder and CEO of Enhanced AI. Brad is an e-commerce veteran and architect of Amazon's seller platform, running $65 billion through their business. He's now leading the charge in AI automation with his platform FluxPrompt. Thank you guys both for joining us today.
Always a pleasure, Gary.
Yeah, happy to be here, Gary.
All right, let's start us off about talking something that's near and dear to my heart. Both of you guys are dealing with companies that are either struggling to implement AI or struggling to bring their people along to help show a return on their AI investment. So what skills or mindsets are you finding kind of define the most valuable employees in an AI-powered company? And how do we kind of like cultivate those skills? Brad, I'll ask you to kind of like kick us off.
All right, yeah. There's a lot there. I actually think one of the most fascinating things is that I'll start high level. I think we're in a phase of kind of corporate world where revenue per employee should at least be doubling. And if the C-suite is not looking to double revenue per employee, they're not paying attention to the world right now, right? And so it comes down to, okay, well, what am I looking at when I'm talking about doubling revenue per employee? And AI systems, I mean, we've done stuff that has a X, return on value. So there's systems that do more than just, double your, the revenue per that employee, but just kind of across the board, generally should be looking at that. And to answer your question, like the mindset, there's a lot of, people really need to dive into this technology. It's very different than our traditional technology, and they're treating it as the traditional technology because that's what we're used to for the last 40 years. It's very different, but it's amazing in what it can do. We've all experienced some of it, but you got to know there's limitations. You can't say, hey, here's 1 million rows of data. Now go give me the average order value of these 1 million rows of data. Like AI doesn't work that way. It cannot do that, but it could write you a SQL query that would then go and do the function for you, right? So it's just a different way of kind of thinking. And so I think that for employees, I think there's a lot of experimentation that needs to happen, just knowing human nature. I could give you certain courses and things like that to take, but it's more of like, are people experimenting? And really are they curious? That's do you have folks who are actively curious and always just kind of wanting to learn a little bit more? Because that's what's really kind of needed right now is, non-complacency in folks' jobs. That's really what it takes with AI. You got to be curious and kind of mess around with it because we don't even know the limits of it yet, for sure.
I feel kind of like a politician that like you asked a question, but I've got my talking points, so I'm moving over to my script here. But I'm gonna get to the answer. But I think it's important to say right now, before even getting into the skill set, we're in an interesting time because there's two competing fears. One is fear of AI itself and like not understanding what it does, how it works. You type a prompt, you get an answer. People feel like, have I just asked one of those magic 8 balls a question and shook it up and get the answer? I don't know where it's coming from. And so, if you don't understand what's happening under the hood, it's hard to, and sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes the magic 8 ball, gives you the wrong answer and you don't understand how it was generated. So there's fear about, I don't understand this. I don't know when to believe it and when not to. But then on the other side, there's fear of missing this wave. So you've got this crazy start and stop going on. I work with companies doing this every day where they'll get OpenAI Enterprise and roll out 500 seats, but don't give any training, or it's just here's your AI, go do magic. And then they're not used. So I guess saying all that, it's very difficult right now because nobody wants to be the ones who missed the internet wave or the smart, whatever the latest technology is. And this has the potential to be bigger than any of them in my lifetime. But it's kind of like that AOL dial up back in the 90s when they were mailing the discs around, and you dial in and sometimes it takes 2 minutes of hearing that screeching modem and you don't connect, and sometimes you do. And that's sort of where we are with AI right now. But there are people who are adopting it early and understanding how to use it are going to get ahead. And I guess for what people need to know right now, I'll second what Brad said about curiosity. People are learning by just playing with it and figuring out on their own what it can do and what it can't. And the more you use it, the more you understand kind of where those boundaries are. But in a business, the danger is if you don't have a policy around what they can use and what they can't, and people are playing with it and they start to realize, wow, it gets pretty good responses on this, and they're uploading into a free version of one of the models and they don't have the security settings right, you're leaking data out the door. Or if they're creating numbers that are not auditable because they just dumped them into the magic black box. So I think I'm naturally pedantic, but I feel like if you want to stand out in this coming wave, you have to have your domain expertise of the job that you do. But you also, I'm not saying you have to become an engineer or a data scientist, but you need to have a basic understanding of how these models work. Because I think when you have that, passive technologies, I don't need to understand how this microphone works to use it. It's just a pass through. But if I'm going to be offloading decisions or using it as to help me in making decisions, probably a good base level understanding of what's happening with the model is important. So I would say curiosity, playing around with it, but then take the time. There's a million courses out there. I teach a bunch of them, but where you could learn where you could learn kind of what's going on under the hood. But there's YouTube videos. There's, it's not like go back to school. It's just, again, be curious, but follow what's going on and understand it. And then you'll get more confidence with it and be more successful using it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because, I think a lot of the hesitation comes from a lack of understanding on how the models work too. I talk to a lot of people all the time that will bring up, the early hallucination examples, right? When like ChatGPT was first launched, right? And it's like, it can't even tell me what 2 + 2 is. And I was like, well, it's gotten past that, right? So, I'm not expecting it to do advanced computation at this point, like you said, Brad, just, dump the spreadsheet in there and give me the average the average sales for the year, right? But there is a hesitation from a lot of people just because it is still such an unknown. And I think the one thing that's surprising to me is that, we've been at this for almost a couple of years now where, there was mass consumption of this, right? And accessibility was there for everybody. But as I come into these companies and talk to these companies all the time, there's so many people that just have little to no experience, right, with AI right now. And, Glenn, you're how can we put this delicately, in an industry that's behind the adoption curve on a lot of technology, right? And that hesitation really does come from, fear in general, a lot of different fears of, losing your job, fear of it getting it wrong, fear of data privacy and security. With that in mind, as we talk to a lot of these companies, everybody wants to do something, right? Like we get a lot of companies and, I joke about this all the time that we'll have people call us up and say like, hey, I just need one AI. Like, what can you sell me that's like one AI? Like my boss is telling me I got to do something with AI, right? So it's like, what can you give me that's like, that I can just say that I've done something with AI, right? So where do you both suggest that companies kind of start? When you're first doing that first engagement and they're bringing you in and, they're asking for one AI.
Yeah.
How do you start them off?
Yeah. Man, I actually have a bunch of other points to say from the previous discussion, but I do want to say maybe I'll say like two things. One, I just want to follow up quickly, Gary, on your question of your point of like, hey, this is new technology. You've heard me say this before, Gary, but after being in it for a couple of years, I realized that I call AI the right brain of technology when what we've been dealing with for the last 40 years is the left brain of technology. And it's very precise, exact, and specific, but the right brain is procedural, it's generative, it's creative. And so that's why we're seeing some of these hallucinations, just because it's not built to be exact, right? The way traditional technology is, and that's how we approach technology. Oh, it's this exact science thing, but it's a different, almost half of technology with this AI. Just want to bring up that point because it's actually a little more freeing way of thinking, oh, that's why it's hallucinating. It's not hallucinating, it's just more creative. It's a pattern machine, right? Like all it does is know trillions of patterns and it's going to complete based on the trillions of patterns. Like it doesn't know anything. It's just a pattern machine. Like that's what LLMs really are. I've been trained on all these patterns. When we introduce, when we talk about actually practicality, so like I built this system, started building the system Flux Prompt about 3.5 years ago. before ChatGPT even came out, I just saw this technology, AI. I was like, oh, this is incredible, but I'm going to want to build way more than any engineering team will give me the resources to build. So if I build this Flux prompt platform, which is kind of like a mix between N8N or Zapier or Make, but it's built for AI first kind of system. It's a but with the technology, I can give it guardrails and constraints and limits so that I can get 99% accuracy. Like we're doing stuff for medical social security reports, right? Or for big law firms that are doing class action lawsuits, or for, a whole list of things, including financials for companies. But accuracy is super important to us, and consistency, which AI is not good at. But if you give it certain constraints and like whittle it down, then you can actually get it to the certain spot to be really accurate. And I could tell you a bunch of reasons why. But I think for every company, like when we started about a year ago, talking maybe a year and a half ago, talking with companies and doing projects for them, everyone's got these big grand ideas because it's such a cool technology. It's going to spark all these ideas. And so they're like, well, what if we had a whole system that did this, this, this? We're like, well, that's a $500,000 build, or that's a couple $1,000,000 build, or that's even $100,000 build. And it was like just too big. And then like they'd go try and get it approved, and half the time it wouldn't get approved because like it's just too much unknown. It's not that they weren't good ideas, there's just too much unknown in this space. So for most companies, what we've said, and we've shifted about 6 months ago, we said, okay, we love the big ideas. Let's just find one task that has a really good ROI. It's very defined, very specific. And if someone now doesn't, if you're spending 10 hours a day on this paperwork or 100 hours a day on doing this paperwork, let's build an AI agent that takes whatever the input is, creates the paperwork for you. And now those 100 hours a day are given to something else. There's a clear ROI and a clear result. And it's way more consumable for someone to do, and a larger company to come on and say, oh, okay, well, we're doing an AI project. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, this is incredible. Before we're even done, they start moving on to another project. But at least they start getting how it works, right? Within that first project that's just kind of bite size for even one department to do, one project in one department. So that's my suggestion. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and we're in lockstep on that. And I think there's two ways to think about it. When we talk about AI projects, I mean, there's the machine learning we've been doing for 15, 20 years now on the background in companies that have a lot of data and have a higher data maturity, certainly are using the deterministic classical AI machine learning models, but nobody wants to talk about that. I wrote a book about that 5 years ago and nobody cared. But generative AI comes along and suddenly everybody wants to talk about it. But and there's a whole lot more AI experts than I ever knew before. It's like so,
Now everyone's an expert.
yeah, prompt engineers.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I think when you think about projects, and I'm almost tired of hearing ROI on AI right now. And the reason for that is for most companies, unless you are building bespoke workflows, you're not talking about a capital. And don't get me wrong, bespoke workflows are the way of the future. Brad and I are talking after this about his platform because that's. But if you're building bespoke workflows, ROI is easy. If you're looking for efficiency gains or quicker time to insight or whatever, that's great. But what most people are talking about with investment in AI is a software expense. It's are you using Copilot? Which I don't recommend, but
I don't know anyone who does.
yeah.
Yeah.
Are we just
I know
slamming
many
Microsoft?
I know, sorry.
Yeah.
I know many who want to
Bring
get
back
off.
Clippy, or you Chat GPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever you're using. You get, you have the company platform where you can ensure that you can use zero retention policies if needed, if it's that level of security is required, and you have policies in place and all that. In generative AI, people are going to figure out how to get more efficient at their jobs. So you give them the tools, they're going to get more efficient at their jobs. It's kind of think of, and Brad, I think you said this at the beginning, with traditional software, this is very different than traditional software. And if you think about, we put in a new ERP system or a new CRM or whatever, the system is decided, it's pushed out, everybody tells you how to use it, the management tells you how to use it, and you figure it out and you work within that system. Generative AI is different because people are you give them the tools, you give them the training, you give them the guardrails, and then they know their jobs better than anyone else. So they're going to figure out on their own how to get more efficient with it. So using the cloud-based tools is one thing, but then if you're going to integrate it into workflows, something to think about is what is something that is kind of a mindless task that is done periodically, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. And, you want to start with the low risk. You don't want to immediately have it doing your flux analysis on your financials and just rolling that up to the board without a human in the loop.
Yeah.
You find that the lower stakes and you test it, you keep a human in the loop. And once you understand that, then you kind of move through it. But another thing that's happening, there's all kinds of startups out there that have generative AI natives. It's inherent, it's built into the system. And then even the players who've been around for a long time are starting to integrate generative AI. So for a lot of companies, their exposure to generative AI is just going to be in the SaaS tools that they're already using. But if you don't want to wait for that and you are trying to lead ahead, that's when you can talk about ROI and real projects and where you can, hey, maybe we don't need to hire as many people in this department this year because we can AI it. And thinking, could AI do this before you make a hire? That's where the future is going to be if it's not there already.
Yeah. No, sorry. Go ahead, Gary.
No, go ahead, Brad.
I just think it's bad. Yeah. Breaking these the question with AI, and during the turn of the beginning of the year, a lot of people are like, "Is SaaS dead?" Right? Because people are talking about that question because the SaaS layer basically is you got your data, you got your logic layer, and then your UI layer. It's like basically three things, and data's not going anywhere. But this whole logic layer, which used to be 70% of the work, the tech work, is now like gone in an instant. Like AI can do a lot of that logic within seconds. And you don't even you just prompt it for the logic and it will do it. You don't have to code anything. So that's the idea. 70% of the work now gets squished. And so what does that do? It also frees up the UI layer, but I don't want to go too technical. But what that also allows for, and I think is an interesting trend I've seen, is that many companies, I think the big SaaSes will never go away, but there's some companies that are saying, hey, why am I doing SaaS at all? Or who are getting more emboldened by building their own systems instead of using a traditional big SaaS that does everything for them and for a department. They're saying, well, I just want to build my own system because it's so fast and easy comparatively from what it used to be with AI. And you need you might need a technical person or two on staff, which most folks already have. And can that be it, right? Can that do it for them? And so I'm seeing some of this leaning away from actually traditional SaaS, big vertical software into like, hey, more do it themselves. And maybe these are more nimble companies, but some of them are billion-dollar companies that I'm talking with that are like, hey, let's just build our own system or two. I don't want to use these other things. I just want to use this because AI can be so customized so quickly, exactly the way we want it. I don't have to wait for the feature with the drop down to do what I want. I can just kind of prompt it to do exactly what I want. And I'm seeing some of those trends come about as well, which is, it's kind of fascinating. I definitely don't think it'll completely go that way at all. I mean, SaaS is still around. It's just going to have more AI integrated, but I'm seeing a lot more of these companies feel enabled and more emboldened to do more with software, with AI as part of the software.
As this kind of like changes exactly what you just said, like it's kind of like realigning and reimagining industries and markets. Where do you see kind of like early adopters that motion is kind of like, I don't want to say ROI, but having the greatest impact? Glenn, like where are you seeing it in finance that like when used with fidelity, AI is having the greatest amount of impact? I guess with like less risk, since that audience is also concerned with that.
Yeah. And I think Brad's going to second this too. So I'll talk about AI, but I don't want everything I say, I don't want people to think, oh, I can just go do this in ChatGPT, because we're building integrations and
Yes.
we're solving for.
Chat is not AI.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
So a great example would be if I have just financial statements. I've got an income statement and I want to do my monthly variance analysis. Computers are much better at spotting patterns and variances than people are. So like sort of the first pass of, okay, here's my, budget actual, here's my actual versus prior period, prior year, whatever you're comparing, you're looking at trends. AI can very quickly identify trends, see where the variances are, point them out to you. But if you have a general ledger that has 10,000 transactions in it in a month, ChatGPT is not going to go look at that. But what the future is going to be is, and it's here in a lot of ways, and I think Brad would second this, where if we can on the back end have an interface that can go look at your GL data, it will tell you not just, hey, your COGS were 10%, but your revenue was down 5%, it could go look at the GL behind the COGS and say, you paid this vendor twice this month. That's probably a mistake, or whatever the underlying cause is that you're not going to get just from uploading into ChatGPT. But what people are not realizing yet is ChatGPT has limitations with the context window, but especially with tools like protocols like MCP and other integrations that you can do, you can put an AI chat layer on any database, on any website that has an API. And that's where the real difference is going to be made. And what's crazy with that is you can, without having to write SQL queries, you could vibe code an app, a web front end to be able to interact with the data, which is opening up all kinds of security and compliance risks. So I think right now, there's the answers of you can do Monte Carlo simulations right in ChatGPT, which is pretty amazing. You can do complicated forecasting models right in ChatGPT. But the tools that we're rolling out and using are when you can actually integrate into data warehouses, into different accounting systems, and interact with your data that way. Because I don't know if you can't write SQL, or you're not on the data team or whatever, and you're trying to get a report from your company and you have to get in line behind all the other report requests that are out there, or there's a self-serve dashboard that you don't understand the data dictionary and sources of truth, you can come up with wrong numbers and everything. But if you can put a conversational chat layer on there and have in the background, by the way, this is our data dictionary, this is the schema of the database, this is where you're getting all of it. I mean, any digital process right now can be automated. And by the way, yes, we can put compliance checks in there where we're logging every prompt, logging every response, putting who the user was, what time it was and everything. If they're doing something where the generative AI is creating a number, well, we're going to log the Python that was used to create that number. So this can all be done. Just don't think you're going to have an auditable trail if you go in and just do it direct in one of the cloud-based ones.
In the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with everything that Glenn's saying. And I think an interesting thing to think about, and this might blow our minds a little bit, but AI gets, like any people, we're going to be asking to do so many tasks and so many things. You can't just say, hey, AI, go do this, and it's going to go do all this magical stuff for you. Like, really, it's not that smart. And what people have been building over the last year are these iterative layers that you don't even see, but you ask it and it's only smart enough for this, but it actually builds like 7 or 8 or 9 or 20 bots underneath to go do certain tasks. And now those are generic and they're trying to be good, but at the end of the day, like, these AI systems and orchestrations are going to be dozens or hundreds of these small little micro bots that are doing things, these little micro AI agents, because it's small enough where the AI can understand it and be highly accurate when it does it. So when you're talking about putting in, AI into another database or into a system, like, you might have 3 or 4, one that just looks at certain types of data, one that, just pulls out other pieces of data. And I think when we think of software, many times we just think of like, here's the whole system. But when you start thinking of AI, it's, hey, there's lots of these, there's dozens of these things that are going to be orchestrated the right way to get the data that you want out of it.
To that point, what do you think like the future of the org chart looks like when you have these bots? I mean, everybody wants to refer to them as like taking, roles. I don't know if that's necessarily the way that I would position it, but I'd be interested in both of your takes. But who kind of like takes the responsibility for if it's functioning and if it's doing the job right, in a way that's in a way that's like measurable and accurate? I've talked to a couple people, Glenn, to your point, in the finance world, that are kind of worried that there's going to be kind of like skill attrition, right? Because the manual components of a lot of what they used to do and the analysis that goes with that is that they're worried that, in X number of years, that nobody will know whether or not
How
the
it
bot
works.
is getting it right. Exactly. Like, they just have to trust the numbers, right? So it's kind of like, where do you see kind of like the responsibility for these automations sitting? Like, do you think that they should sit in the org chart with the team that's using them the most? Do you think that they ladder up to IT? How do you think that this works in the future?
Glenn, you can take it first shot. I definitely have my strong opinions too.
Yeah, so do I. So this goes back to my earlier point on understanding what's going on under the hood. So right now, if your domain expertise, you got a master's in accounting or a master's in finance or master's in whatever that wasn't computer science or engineering or what, like you're getting these tools and I think Brad can speak to this, a lot of low code, no code tools, and you can cobble something together and it could work pretty well. But there's, data scientists and machine learning engineers know that all machine learning models have creep and they drift and you don't know what to look for there, or you don't know the rules about biases that the models may have and everything. So with the skill set that's there right now, I think definitely lean into whatever your domain expertise is, but you also on the side have to know, like if you were a finance person that Excel came out or whatever was before Excel, Lotus Notes or whatever, and you didn't learn how to use that, you were not going to be a finance person for a lot longer. And just, so this is a big ask. And I don't know. I mean, this is the path that I've taken. I don't know if every job could also become, oh, I'm also a part-time data scientist or engineer. But I mean, it's going to be, and young people who are coming up now with it have the advantage of sort of learning them in tandem, and it'll be integrated into all their curriculum as well. But for those of us who've been doing this for 150 years, it's a lot to go back and learn another skill set. So in my case right now, as a consultant, what I'm seeing is I'm signing continuing contracts with people that, yes, we'll maintain this for you, because I'm not talking to anybody in the finance and accounting department that even wants to manage these things. I don't know, Brad, I really didn't give you an answer other than you sort of need this hybrid in between, where it's kind of like when you embed finance people or what across different organizations, or you embed data scientists across different organizations. Their core skill set is this, but they have to know enough to work with the domain experts in a department to manage it. I guess you got to have someone, ultimately, they could be embedded, but with that technical know-how that's beyond the typical domain expertise.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Brad,
No, I think that's great insights. And I totally agree. And I think it's like a 5-year thing, and maybe it's a 10-year thing where, like, ultimately I believe, and probably depends on the org, but the domain expertise is where it should stay, right? And I think all of these AI tools are getting easier and easier to use. I mean, like I said, like AI was around, generative AI was around for a long time. OpenAI was doing stuff for a long time, and all of a sudden chat came out, which is a super easy to use interface. And then it exploded faster than anything in history of all technology, right? And it's getting easier to actually interface with the AI. I think you're going to need someone who understands how the AI works. And it's not that complicated, to be honest. It's just like getting to know. It's like Excel. I always say our platform, I'm like, hey, this is like Excel. Like the first time you opened it up, you're like, what is this? I got cells and variables and references and formulas. But now it's just like second nature to a lot of folks. It, like, AI and understanding it is going to get there. And the understanding of how the systems are working will get there, of like how this AI systems are working. So it should belong, I was in market, folks in marketing know how to use Excel. Folks in HR know how to use Excel. Folks in finance, and not just the finance crew, right? And the accounting. It is ubiquitous across the whole org. And to get the most out of it, you do need the domain expertise, because realistically, AI is an 80% technology. Like, it will get you 80% correct. And then you ask it again, it'll be 80% correct. And so the more these thinking models, all they're doing is they're asking the same model, the same question you asked at the very beginning, like 7 times, which means it gets to like 95% accurate. They just ask the same question over and over again. Did I answer that right? Did I answer that right? Like, it's an 80% technology ultimately. And so to actually get closer to accuracy, you need to constrain it in certain ways, and you need the domain expertise to really constrain it, to be like, no, this should never, these sentences should never start like this, or our financial statements always start with the summary first, or whatever it might be. I think it ultimately needs to lie with the expert. Now, this is coming from someone who's kind of been in between most of my career, both the technical and then, the expertise side. So I expect people to learn some technologies. I realize that not everyone will. And so as a support, it probably belongs in IT somewhere, but IT also needs to change, right? Because the current infrastructure is not going anywhere with data and security on those compliance. But now there's this whole AI thing of like how people are using it, how they're monitoring and tracking, and how accurate these AI models are. So there needs to be an expert there to kind of help and support these folks who are the experts, right? Like I'm not going to hire someone to be my Excel guy for marketing and HR and finance. Like those folks eventually need to learn it. Then there might be an Excel guru in case something breaks with really complex models, right? I think it's probably a good similarity from what I've seen.
Yeah, I think that is a good analogy to Excel. All right, I have one last question that we'll finish up with, but 5 years from now, well, let's start out with this. So right now, you can define having a competitive business advantage almost by that one AI, right? Which is why people are still asking for it, right? I just need one AI, I just need something, right? And you can define that that's kind of a bit of a competitive business advantage. In 5 years, what are companies going to have to say that they're doing with AI to prove that it's actually a competitive business advantage for them?
First thought to me is what you keep hearing about is the single person unicorn. So to have a competitive advantage in AI, it is a company that is shaped around the technology that is AI first. What can we have agents that do, think about everything. There's the core component of your business, and then there's all the stuff that goes into supporting your business. And that's the reason that BPO is a model that people use. It's like, you know what? We're going to really focus on what we do. We're going to outsource all this extraneous stuff. But everything that's going on in BPO could be done significant, maybe not today 100%, but we're getting there. Build more agents, and we're going to find ways to automate all these. Any task that's digital, whether it's AI or rule based, the technology's there. We can automate. If it has an API, connects to data, has a process that is scalable and repeatable, then we can absolutely automate that today. But it's going to be even more so in the number of jobs we're able to, because if you think about RPA was great, if robotic process automation was great for companies who could spend the money and take the time and had enough data and enough to train it. But with AI, you don't need that much context. It's got the context in the background. So when you're training it to automate tasks, you just need a few examples and some rules and some guardrails around it. So a long way of saying, I think that the companies that are using AI to full advantage in the future they have the right people in the right seats and the right bots in the right seat.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think of 5 years in the future, I think it's going to be odd to not have AI in your company everywhere. And those who don't are going to be very slow and behind or out of business. That's probably a little draconian, but I think it's kind of we've been in a spot where we're actually helping plenty of businesses who are struggling. And the board's like, we need to do something or else this business isn't going to survive. And we come in and implement an AI solution, and all of a sudden the revenue per employee goes up. And now they can survive. And so there's all these pressures, external pressures from everything going on in the world, and they'll continue to happen. And those who are actually making good profits and margins will have a lot of these AI systems in place. And so I actually see it as pretty like a fairly ubiquitous thing to be put in place. And when folks don't have it, they'll just either be working way longer than everybody else, or maybe have some, or I don't know, right? Like they're just working longer and harder than everybody else because everyone else has AI systems that are doing the analyses for them or automating certain processes. Like I think I've thought this for a while, is it seems like AI this time is like it's moving everyone up to an orchestrator, right? We're no longer like the folks that are doing a lot of the tactical work, or we won't be in the future. I don't know how long it will take, but a lot of the tactical work we do, we will soon take for granted, and we'll have AI doing the tactical work, and we'll be the orchestrators of saying, well, and that's where the genius will be, is say, no, my orchestration is by having it do this, this, and this, and that's why my end product is better, versus someone else saying, well, my orchestration of AI is doing this, this, and this, right? Now, I'm not too big into like orchestra and orchestral music, even though I like it, but it's like the conductors, there are different conductors and there's different ones that are better at different things. It's, it's kind of an analogy there of like, hey, everyone's going to be like the orchestrator, the conductor here of their own department and their own AI. It's like, why is your marketing better? Well, it's because I told it to do this, this, and this first, and then I had it do these other pieces over here, and that produces the result that's way better for me. And that's going to be very common, I think, in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like some chefs that can just do more with the potato than others, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, this
Totally.
was great. I think we're going to have to do a round 2 with this in the near future. I think there's a lot that we probably all wanted to cover that we weren't able to get to today. But any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I think we've covered it for today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could just
Awesome.
keep going for a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
I know.
Final thought. Go experiment. Go play around with AI. Go make something fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And so we'll have a blog following this up. If you have any questions or if you want to get in touch with Brad or Glenn directly, we will link to that blog in the show notes. Thank you both for being here. And I look forward to our next conversation, guys.
Hey,
Thanks, guys.
Gary.
Thank you.